Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Welcome to this series, Christian Apologetics, that I upload one every 2 Sundays. And for those of you who don't know, I am a Christian and I believe that there is good evidence to support the existence of God. I think there is good philosophical, logical, and scientific evidence to support the claims of Christianity, to support the existence of a central supernatural being that we call God, and that the Bible and the Gospels especially are reliable eyewitnesses accounts on what really happened to the person of Jesus Christ. So his life and death and resurrection. And now I've been doing since last weeks some arguments for the existence of God. So I've tried to follow J. Warner Wallace book, God's Crime Scene, right? So I'm following that kind of pattern. So I'm presenting to you the what I think are the most important arguments for the existence of God. So arguments that once you consider everything, it's more reasonable to conclude that there is a creator, that there is a God behind the evidence that we can see, rather than explaining that evidence with chance, with billions of years, and with randomness. And now in this third video, I've already talked about the fine-tuning argument. It was the first video. Then I've talked about the cosmological argument. So fine-tuning argument is how all the different physics, constants, and laws seem to have been fine-tuned in order to, first of all, allow the atoms and the universe to even exist and to be sustainable. And second thing, that allow the universe, and especially our planet Earth, a lot of different things are needed so that our planet Earth can actually sustain life, and life can even arise in certain very specific conditions. So that's the life fine-tuning argument. The second argument is the cosmological argument, so the beginning of the universe. So the beginning of the universe, it's something that better relates to the fact that something caused that beginning of the universe. We may call it Big Bang, we may call it God, but something was the cause of that Big Bang. And because on the creation of the universe, at the beginning of the universe, things like time, space, and matter started to exist in that moment, that means that the cause for these three things only must be something that is not made of time, is not made of space, and is not made of matter. So something that is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. Then it must be personal because it actually caused the universe to exist. So it caused it to be, so it wanted it to be. And then it must be very, very intelligent because the universe, as we know, is very, very complex. There are many complex mathematical and physics laws that are inside of it. So it must be intelligent. So spaceless, immaterial, timeless, and intelligent and personal being, we call this being God. So that's the cosmological argument. Then in this third video, I'm going to talk about the origin of life argument. So this argument argues pretty much only taking into consideration planet Earth, all right? So we're just talking about the Earth. And the question is, how did life arise on Earth? How? And now the Bible is very, very clear. The Bible says that God created every single living life form on the Earth. So God created plants, God created animals, God created man, God created water and land, everything. So God is the one that created everything. So that is what the Bible teaches us. Now, scientists have tried always to exclude God from the equation and try to find ways to explain the origin of life in our planet with more naturalistic processes. So processes that don't require any supernatural being or intervention. And now, if you go into any primary school science book, right? If you have any little brothers or sisters, or maybe if you remember your time from school, you may remember that the hypothesis is the abiogenesis hypothesis for the origin of life. So the fact that I'm going to just explain it here in a few words. So the fact that the first organic components were a product of billions of years of reactions between four main chemical components. So carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and sorry, I missed one. CO and hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. So those are what are called the four basic components for any organic life. And now in billions of years of interaction between these chemicals, the first organic molecules were born. So just because of chance, billions of years, eventually you will get in something that is similar to an organic component, and then different organic components interacting between one another, and then more elements, more chemicals reacting all together, eventually created the first called protein. All right, and then from the first protein, then we have interaction between different proteins, then we may have something similar to a strand of DNA, right? Then we have the first living form that is like with a wall, all right? So something with separated from the outside, all right? So we have a wall, and inside we have DNA and different proteins. And then from this singular, very simple life form, then more interactions, more time, more again, like interactions, mutations. Sometimes also they say about DNA mutating, accumulating new things, so new functions. Then more complex life arose. So we have from the unicellular organism into pluricellular organism, then more complexity, more time, more mutations, more interactions between different organisms, and then eventually after billions and billions and billions of years, you get into animals. You get man, you get plants, you get everything that we see nowadays. So that's that's explanation, that's the hypothesis that scientists have tried to take. Now there is one main problem with this abiogenesis hypothesis. So the fact that life arose from non-life. So organic components arose from non-organic components. Now the first flaw is the fact that if you go into any book, there is the Euler-Miller experiment that it's called like the experiment that demonstrated how life arose in the earth. But unfortunately, if you look more into detail into that experiment, the experiment only shows that given optimal conditions and given optimal amounts of the different chemicals, you can have organic elements, so organic components, creating originating, all right, from all the different reactions. Then we have organic components. Now, having organic components does not equal life, right? So having, I don't know, like CHH with another CH, maybe with an O, and maybe a nitrogen somewhere, does not really equate to a full functional protein, even if it's very, very simple, right? A protein is made of thousands, maybe thousands and thousands of those organic components, one after the other, and organized in a very, very specific way. So unfortunately, that experiment, even if it does show that given enough time and given optimal conditions, it's possible from just singular chemical components to reach organic components, this doesn't show that eventually those organic components, given enough time and enough optimal conditions, can actually create proteins. That is completely an assumption that it hasn't been demonstrated or tested in any lab in the world that from organic components you can actually have something that relates or is very similar to a functional protein, even if it's very, very simple. This hasn't been proved, this hasn't been obtained in any lab in the world because it's just too unlikely. There are some scientists that have tried to calculate the probability of this to happen. So what's the probability of having, enough chemical components, enough optimal conditions what's the chance that all these components can arrange themselves somehow, with different reactions, can arrange somehow in order to create a functional protein. What's the chance? What's the probability of that? And what they found is that the probability of all these components reacting and organizing in a way to create a protein is one chance over 10 to the 104th. So it's a very, very small chance. Like it's a 0 followed by 100 zeros, and then you find a 1. So it's like a very, very unlikely chance of this to happen. So you can already see why I say that if you take God away from the equation, you cannot even, probabilistically speaking, you cannot even measure how even life arose on the earth. And now here, remember, we're just talking about one singular basic protein. We're not even talking about DNA, that it's thousands and thousands of times more complex than a protein. We're not even talking about a singular cell having walls, having different proteins collaborating one another, a DNA strand in the correct order so that it can actually code into something, into more proteins, into more functions in the cell. We don't even have all this complexity yet. We're just talking about one singular basic protein. So imagine the chance of having multiple proteins, having a strand of DNA, having a wall, like the number, the probability becomes just so tiny that like it's probably it's close to impossible than any other thing. Now this is just to, I want you to think about that, because in the schools or like on scientific programs or media or stuff like that, no one really goes into depth into explaining this. When I was a kid, I was really I wondered, and I asked my professor, but is this it is likely that this is going to happen? Like, have they even tested it? Like, have they tried it to make it possible? Because remember, when you have a lab and you're trying different things in a lab, you're placing everything in an optimal condition. But like outside, the real world, the real environment is not such a beautiful and peaceful place where like every chemical component can react in such a easy way. There are many different external factors that can influence. So the probability becomes even lower. So I think that even talking about the origin of life and even talking about one singular protein or one singular very basic living form, it's very, very unlikely that only with chance, even if you add billions and billions of years, even adding all that, it's still so unlikely that this happened that it's much more reasonable to conclude that someone, a supernatural being that we call God, was the one that created everything. Because if you think about it, DNA is like a code, right? DNA is, if you search for the internet for any explanation, DNA is just a number of different nucleotides, all right, that we simplify with letters, all right? There is the A, there is the T, then there is the C, the G, and then the U on the RNA. So we have these 5 different nucleotides, all right? And the order at which they are placed, the order actually means something. So the order on which these letters are, these nucleotides are placed one after the other on the DNA actually means something. It's a function for a protein, or it's a function for another protein, or for another function, all right? So it's a code. It's a code for your cells to work properly and to do their job. And now, if you go into a computer and if you look into the code of the computer that allows the computer to function properly, it's pretty much the same. So you find a number of ones and zeros that in a certain order are going to actually create the code for the computer to work. And now, just imagine this, DNA is probably thousands of times more complex than any super advanced computer in the world. It's more complex. It's millions of nucleotides one after the other, at least speaking for the human beings. Now, computers are made by men. Computers are created by men. There are developers, and people, scientists that have, written the code and have actually created computers. So how much more DNA, that it's much more complex than a computer code, how much more DNA needs something like a coder, so some outside source that actually was the one that created DNA. And that's what we call God. So that's why I say that, if you just consider DNA as a code, every code has someone that has coded it, right? So DNA is a code, so there is someone that has coded DNA to be in that way. And that's what we call God. So yeah, that was the third argument. I hope you guys enjoyed, and God bless you. See ya. Bye-bye.